Hello, welcome back, and I want to talk this week about disclosure to your children. Now, just on a personal note, I want you to know that this is kind of from me, from my own personal experience. I made a decision partly because of the fact that I had the advantage of having a son later in life and watching my other friends raise children, and I would say, well, I like that, or oh, I don't like that. I think that one of the things that I learned from some dear friends is that when their children asked any question, they answered them, and they gave them the right to stop it at any point they wanted to. I did that with my son from the time he was a wee babe up. Anything he asked me, I would answer, and he always had the right to stop me. And so we've had conversations about a lot of things over his life. He's now, as he's in his early 20s, and he still today has the right to ask me a question, anything he wants to ask. There'll be no judgment, and I'll answer until he tells me, okay, Dad, that's enough. We've had some conversations that have been ongoing, like sex, since he was 3 years old. Whatever he asked, I would answer. Whatever he needed to know, I would give him the answers. And he always would stop me. He said, okay, Dad, that's enough. I don't want any more. Now, I think it helps when you have a relationship like that with children where they know they can come to you and they're going to get honesty. That they're going to know why their world is the way it is and why they feel certain things, or children pick up things in the environment and they want to know the truth. I think that is a way of raising children in a way that where there's no shame. There are no messages to them that if they were better children, bad things wouldn't happen to the family. All of this. Because remember, as you disclose to children, you're breaking one of the 3 rules that destroys shame, and that's silence and secrets. So don't keep things. Now, there's times where there's certain things that are appropriate. My son has always had that thing where he'll push to the point and he'll stop. And I've answered those questions. He's known my story of my life since he was a young boy. What that's availed us to, I think, is that today we have a relationship of honesty and we both show up buck naked at the show-up place, and that's really cool. Some of you may not have had that. I'm laying that out to you because I know it's a personal experience. It's tremendously rewarding when you sit down with your children and they know they don't get the truth. And that you know because of that relationship and your vulnerability and your willingness to be humble and laying it out there in the nakedness of your own self appropriately, which we're going to go through in a minute, they're going to feel safe with their own struggles in life. They're going to realize that they're not the only one that struggles with stuff. And so when they get in trouble, where do you want them to go? To you or somebody down the street? I think that building this honesty, building this trust rapport, coming to the show-up place with them, being vulnerable with them, builds that platform that gives them a safe place to land when they hit hard times in their life. So this is why I'm leaving you in this direction. I think disclosure to children is important. I think that them not knowing the truth hurts more than them knowing. And so bottom line, I recommend you do disclosure to children. Now, it's an appropriate way. So let me go through some of that. One of the things that I think that telling and disclosing to your children is you begin to break down generational cycles. You break down the cycle of the family dysfunction to deal with your own stuff. So you bring your stuff out, you put it out there, and you talk about it. It creates a healthier family where family members can talk, they can feel, they can take responsibility, they can solve problems, and they provide for members' needs. I mean, they could say, okay, this is a place where we can be messy, and we'll be committed to working on our messiness. It's okay to be messy. It's okay not to be perfect. You can be imperfect and loved and accepted and wanted and desired, and I can be proud of you as a parent even when we're not perfect. And I think a huge piece of this whole thing is saying that, no, I'm not perfect. And it's okay not to be perfect. And here's some of my mistakes. Here's some of my failures. And learn by my mistakes so you don't make the same ones. Now, would it have been helpful to you if growing up in your home, if one of your parents had talked to you in a healthy way about whatever was going on in your family and said, this is really about my stuff and I'm bringing this in and I'm wrong, and so it's not your fault, and they talk to you as a parent to a child to let you know this? Well, the same thing would be true with your children. They know craziness has gone on. They know that mom and daddy's upset. They know that things are not right. There's an elephant in the middle of the living room. They know that. You're not going to tell them something they don't know. Most children know that pretty early in life. But it's that ownership. It kind of takes the craziness out of the atmosphere. It makes things make sense for them. They may not like it, but at least it's not crazy. Now, I have some guidelines that I think are important for you as you disclose things to your children. I think that first of all, you need to check your motives. Why are you telling them these things? If it's, are you giving your children your spouse's inventory? Then is the reason for that, is that you're trying to take sides and get them on your side? What are your motives? If they're for the wrong reasons, this thing's going to backfire on you. It's got to be for transparency. You know, I don't get into my, when I talk to my son, I don't talk about his mother's inventory. My son has an open access to my inventory. He knows my faux pas, and I got a long list of them. And he knows that. It's none of my business to tell him what his mother's inventory is. Okay, so I just stick with that. Now, follow age-appropriate sharing. Now, there's certain things that you can share to a teenager where you can't share with an elementary school child, and then a preschool child. I mean, there's certain things that you got to share, but if you keep the door open and you say to the junior high, say the 5, 6 and younger, you say, well, dad or mom has done some inappropriate things and it's really hurt your mama's or your daddy's feelings, and I've been wrong. Now, that's one thing. Now, if the door's left open, as they go along, they'll start working through some of this and they'll begin to come back and ask you questions. Well, do you mean this or do you mean that? Oh, I understand now, okay. And so they're seeing the consequences, and it begins to make sense to them why this is taking place and what's going on. Then he says, follow the child's desire to know. Some children may say, I don't want to know anything. Others, they want to know. Like my son. My son would start a conversation, okay, Dad, that's enough. Whatever he asked, I was sharing with him, and then he would say, okay, Dad, I don't want to know anymore. Okay, all right, that conversation stopped. Yeah, lo and behold, a few months later, he says, do you remember we were talking about, I have some more questions, and they come back. Different children process differently. And so if you've got a number of children in your family, each one of them, being different ages also, will also process differently. Some will want to know more information, some will want to know less. Some will want to know, bottom line, am I still safe in this family? Are we going to still have a family? In other words, probably for most younger children, they want to know, is my world going to fall apart now or what? That's first. How safe am I? Is probably one of the major questions that they have. Whether it's spoken or unspoken, is they want to know that. Then provide resources for the child, other adults to talk to, uncles, aunts, anybody that child would feel more comfortable with, or a backup, a therapist, get them the help they need so they can have a safe place to go talk about their feelings and what's going on. I think for me, having my son in therapy was a tremendous expense. It was really hard to do, but it paid off, exponentially. I am so grateful for it. He says, I don't want to ever be a counselor in my life, but I'm telling you today, as a young 20-something-year-old, he knows far more than I do at 40. I think it paid off. It paid off. He was able to process through and to work through and to get somebody outside of the system to help him, keep him stable, keep him moving on. I think it paid off. I think he's a pretty sound emotionally kid because of the fact that we did some of those things for him. So get that for him. Specifics on how to do this. I think disclosure should come from the addict and the spouse present if possible. I think the story needs to be told from the person who did it. That's what I was saying earlier. My son knows my story. I told him my story. He knows everything about me from all the way back. He knows. Now, if it's possible to have the spouse sitting there and as you tell the story, I think that's a good way to do it. It may not always happen that way, but it's a good way to go at it. Then the next thing is emphasize that it's not the child's fault. Most children, especially the younger they get, if bad things happen in the universe, their universe is the family, then maybe there was something they should have done differently, or there was something that they could have done better than not have this happen. And so they get into all these kind of young adolescent thinking about how much of an impact they've had on this whole thing. It's not their fault. Communicate that over and over and over to them. This is not your fault. This is my fault. I did this. You had nothing to do with this. The next thing is assure the child that he or she doesn't have to take care of you. Sometimes when you're in a bad spot, you begin to break down, then they'll kick into this mode of trying to care for you. Don't let that happen. I'm telling you right now, you're the caregiver, they're to receive care. It never should be turned around the other way. Don't let that happen. It may feel neat, it may feel comforting, but you get your caretaking done from someone else. A therapist, your sponsor, somebody in your recovery group. You go outside with other adults that are healthy people to connect with to get your care given, get care from them, not your children. Then the next thing is explain the practicalities. Whether you're going through a separation, an in-house separation, whether you're going to meetings or you're going to counseling, be upfront with them. I mean, I told my son, my son, he knew. When I went down on meetings, he was doing his homework outside the meeting. I set him up a little chair and a table, and he would do his homework while I was in there doing a meeting. There was a number of times he came into the meetings too. It's like, this is not going to be a secret. I'm not going to hide this stuff. You can come in and do these meetings with me. You can see what I'm doing. He knew I was going to a counselor. He went to a counselor. So it's like, keep it all out there. Let them understand why this is going on. And yes, it's hard, but the payoff is down the road. Now they may fuss. They may say, I don't want to do that. I want to go play. Well, that's the child. You can understand that and just say, I understand. I'd rather go play too. But right now, I got to go do this. I got to go to counseling. I got to go to a meeting, whatever. Now, keep the door open for further discussions, because if that door's open and that child knows that door's open, they'll keep coming through. They'll keep coming through, and they'll keep asking questions. You'll build a platform of a relationship of transparency and vulnerability and intimacy with that child. That child will never have to face things in their life like you've had to alone, because they'll know the door's always open. They can come back and talk to you. That's what you want in a relationship. That's coming to the show-up place. That's being vulnerable. That's inviting, because you're coming there and you're taking ownership, you're being honest, and you disclose appropriately. You build that relationship that over time, as they get older and older and they keep asking you questions, it's then they begin to try to navigate through life, learning from you. See, they can learn from your mistakes too. Wouldn't you like for them to avoid some of the things that you've done? Oh, I do. I hope my son will avoid many decisions that I've made. And they only can do that if we're transparent, if we're honest about our mistakes. I just challenge you to take this step with your children. Have your therapist help you with this. Talk to other people, your sponsor. Work out the details. Go with a plan. And then when you sit down with them, and each child will be different, remember that. You have a plan that's different for each child, and you respond to their need and how much they need to know. It pays off. It's worth it if you just make the journey. Thank you.